Should we start going?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Thank you everybody for joining. This talk is going to be about Astrophytum cultivars, and Georgiana and Nathan are so gracious for hosting us and for going through their hybridization and seed cultivation process. So we'll do a quick little intro, walk through their growing operation, and then get into their F1, P1 process stuff. So
Thanks.
yeah.
Okay, I can get started. I'm Georgiana. I've been collecting cacti for over 20 years, but I actually moved around a lot, so I haven't had a collection in a really long time. Once I moved to New York, which was about 7 years ago, I started a collection again, and in the past years, we've also been growing from seed. So growing from seed is new to me as well.
Hi, I'm Nathan. Prior to this, I didn't really know anything about cacti prior to meeting Georgiana, but I could tell she was very passionate about plant growing. And then I would say my interest really kind of kicked off last year when we were able to successfully pollinate some plants and get our own seed and see the results of Astrophytum hybridization. So now I'm in it for the long haul. So yeah.
And all that to say is like the pollination and hybridization is taking place inside of this apartment.
Right.
This is like
Right.
not outdoor.
Right.
This is-
It's been in New York. I mean, we've been fortunate to have some like apartments that do have balcony outdoors, but this summer the plants were indoors and it worked just fine. So yeah, in fact, we have a little bit of like 2 data points to compare last year to this year in the top.
Right. Because I've never tried pollinizing before because I never thought we could get enough blooms to do that in New York, but it turns out at least Astrophytums bloom a lot here if you have a south-facing window. So yeah, I'm totally into it now.
All right, Nathan, you want to walk us through your little, definitely not little, the sizable grow up you've got going?
Sure. So starting from back here. So this is actually like probably the youngest or the start of the young seedlings that we have. So these are in quail eggs for humidity. These were planted probably just like a few months ago. Some of the stuff in this tray is a bit older, so we can talk more about that. Then over here, we have some slightly older seedlings with Astrophytums. There are some 2 to 3 year old non-Astrophytum plants that Georgiana has been growing from seed. In planters, we have some 2-inch pots. So again, these are like everything here is seed grown, maybe 2 to 3 years for the stuff in the front. More of the same here in this bookshelf under grow lights. Here you have some younger seedlings in a takeout container for the humidity, and then some more of this down here, and then the main area. So we do have some adult plants, like these are not grown from seed. They were outside earlier, but it's too cold in New York now, so they have to be indoors. And then we have seedlings of, I would say, varying age here. Maybe mostly everything here is probably like about 1 year, besides the adult plants that you see. Got some grafts here, which we'll discuss a bit later. These are again more about 1 year old seedlings. And yeah, finally, right, everything on this bench is seed grown, including this pretty sick enormous. I had some like ferrocactus, some mellows that are grown from seed, and these are astros that we moved out of those like humidity domes recently. So yeah, that's like the quick rundown. And so we can get into the slide deck. Switch cameras.
you're all set.
Okay, great, cool. Yeah, so today in the talk, we'll be kind of going a little into like the background of Astrophytum as a genus and how it's you know, a very popular cultivar species around the world. The picture here is like, you know, some seedlings that we got out of our own plants. So it's like our journey and how we hope to contribute, basically. So you can go to the next one. Okay, so outline, yeah, we'll give a background, talk through work other people have done, our results, a little bit about grafting, and then you know, some what we plan to do in the future. Next. Okay, so for many of you on the talk, I'm sure are aware, Astrophytum is a cactus genus that's native to northeast Mexico and in some parts of the, and then, you know, in the part of the United States, like in Texas that adjoins Mexico. So there are 6 commonly recognized species. You have Myriostigma, ornatum, Capricorn, Coahuilense, Caput medusae, and Asterias. So, you know, there are just some pictures on this that we, when we were doing research for this talk, we, you know, they found a paper that's cited there if you guys want to look it up. So, you know, definitely a lot of difference in morphology of this plants and the genus. And in this paper, they have like a little, you know, theory based on genetic sequencing that these evolutionary divergence of these forms is the result of basically the species expanding to a different part, and then a geological event or a very drastic climate change kind of isolates that species from the other, and then you get the divergence. So
Next slide. Right?
next slide. Right. Okay, so here, you know, getting a little bit into the weeds, for instance, you know, like in around this area of San Luis Potosi, which, you know, many people find amazing cacti specimens there. So in this paper, they were saying, like, you know, their theory is that the plants started from there, and then that you got a migration north, which led to the divergence of Myriostigma and Coahuilense, which are 2 plants that have very similar body forms, but there are some key differences, which we'll talk actually about on the next slide. And then after that, there was a movement from Coahuilense and Capricorn east and down, and that's how you got Asterias, Caput medusae, and then also Myriostigma, there was a movement south, and then you got divergence to ornatum. So, you know, it is all to say that they came from, you know, there's like a common ancestor, and you have some genetic splits. So there's some shared information between plants, but over time you get divergence to be classified as different species. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so talking about clade differences, which is in this case, it's like saying the different species of Astrophytum. So besides the body shapes, you know, for instance, like Asterias is a spherical plant, whereas Myriostigmas have this kind of more defined rib pattern, and then you have some that have spines, like the Capricorn and ornatum, some that don't. The main differences actually are like something you can use to differentiate is the flower. So for instance, here we're showing on one side the Asterias and Coahuilense, which are like kind of a bit closer in clade. They have a flower that has like a red ring. The Coahuilense, the fruit splits from the bottom when it's ripe. Asterias, you know, yeah, the fruit definitely doesn't split from the top. It stays on pretty much, and yeah, I guess like structurally it gets compromised towards the bottom where it's attached. Whereas we have this picture of the Myriostigma showing, this is like a picture of one of our plants. Actually, it's it's this plant here. So when that has fruit, it bursts from the top. You can see the seeds, and it also has like a yellow flower. So what's interesting with Astrophytum, if you move to the next slide, is that, you know, people have hybridized these plants to create some, you know, truly amazing visual species. So, we have on the left, Japanese growers definitely did a ton of impressive groundwork. And then you have enthusiasts all over the world. So here we have some plants from Roman Pavlika in the Czech Republic. I'm sure some of you know him. We purchased a lot of seeds from him. And then, Thailand is cultivar heaven, not just for astrophytums, many different plants. So here you can see some in that upper left small picture, like some very sick, like almost black Asterias that they've hybridized. And then, the popular V types, trying to get plants that only have V type markings and stuff like that. So pretty much these mixing of astrophytums and seeing the visual traits that you get, it makes them a very popular species. And for me personally, that's part of the appeal I've found. Georgiana, do you want to say anything about it?
No, yeah, it's fun not to know what you're gonna get. So yeah, for sure.
Sure. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide is from our 2020. We had plants that were blooming. This was, I'm not gonna try to sound too light about this, but in lockdown New York City where we were living, maybe the one of the positive things that happened was that there was a lot less air pollution outside. So we had plants that had previously not flowered that much, and then on our balcony we got a lot of blooms, and we thought, okay, let's try pollinating some plants, and surprisingly it worked. So you can see the pictures here of ripened fruits, seeds we collected, and as a general, Georgiana and I both have science backgrounds, so we were really trying to quantify and record everything that's done. So in the next few slides, I'll talk about I'll show some of the seedlings that we got out of these crosses.
We actually, I just want to interject really quick.
Sure.
You can speak briefly on this if you'd like.
Sure.
Obviously, we have been talking about this for a little while now, but what differences, if any, did you see with the male versus female, or mother versus father part of your hybridization process?
I guess
it could be anecdotal.
Right. Well, I would say that let's say if we crossed a two Myriostigma that's nudum and speckled, the results of whether the speckled one was the mother or the speckled one was the father, we didn't see that much difference in the seedling types. Similarly for Asterias crosses, I would say that, well, we'll talk about it on the next slide, but for instance, we had this purple Asterias and we wanted to try to continue the purple coloration, and we noticed that, well, we only had it as the mother, but depending on which plant was the father, we saw a stronger transference of purple to the offspring. And then probably the more, the part that we're focusing on, which is actually interspecies cross. So when you have a Myriostigma mother with an Asterias father, then we were only able to do that one way, where the Myrio was the mother, but there's a lot of variety in there. So yeah, that would be just a small comment.
Cool.
Okay, want to move on? Okay, so right here, we're showing our Myriostigma crossing. So pretty much we had these two plants that were blooming pretty reliably. There's a Trichostatum nudum, and then a speckled 5-rib. And so we got seedlings with different numbers of ribs. We got a few 3 ribs, a surprising amount of 4 ribs actually, and few 5 ribs. I would say at this point 4 is the dominant number, but it is true that sometimes they add an extra rib. And we got a very nice distribution of fleck patterns. So we got some nudum seedlings. We got some that had flecks more similar to this one. And we also got ones with flecking that was more reminiscent, I would say, of like Onzuka type patterns. I mean, you know, it's a little hard to see the smaller they are, but and we can highlight some of these later if you guys want to see, but like definitely we got fleck patterns that were unlike anything that was on the parent plant. So that was pretty cool. You
I
can
have a
go.
question on that.
Sure.
So, and again, like whatever your thinking on this is, like not holding you know, not holding you accountable.
Right,
for your
right,
answer.
right,
But like,
right.
how much of this do you think is like the result of the plant being in the juvenile stage of its life versus like the genetic makeup of the cross?
So when you say the juvenile stage, you
When
mean
something is a seedling, it's like, is
right,
this gonna be
right.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, you're totally right that, you know, we'll have a photo of this and then maybe in 2 years it looks like something completely different. The other thing is that, you know, when we got the adult plants, like we didn't necessarily know their lineage, so to
Right.
speak. So for instance, when we bought this Myrio, like it was actually billed as like saying like Onzuka gene or I don't know, like a description of Onzuka, but the more pictures I saw of Onzuka, I was like, this isn't an Onzuka, you know, like it has like the small flex. So, but who knows, maybe this was a seedling that came from a cross between an Onzuka and something else, and so they're thinking it has that genetic like latent capability, but you just don't know like when it's going to manifest,
Yeah.
basically.
But-
So
Yeah, I think the variation in patterns will stay because now, even when they're all seedlings, like some of them look like the parent, but some of them look completely different. So even if they evolve into something else, I think some of the differences will stay. So
and yeah, and like as a, you know, just a quick brief aside, like even if you read like the story of how Onzuka was like created, that plant, it was like they had like one guy was trying to cross like a nudum with another plant that had like, I don't know, one big fleck or something, and then he got like that crazy fleck pattern like all across the plant. So sometimes, you know, you just don't know what's really going to come out. So yeah, in this case, we're just gonna, you know, we're gonna document it as best we can, and I guess we're even gonna then, you know, hopefully in the future, if we get like an F2 from, you know, the offspring of one of these seedlings, we can maybe make some preliminary, like, you know, postulations on
Right,
what it
and
is.
like your documenting process is like fairly rigorous, right? So like,
Right. So we have a spreadsheet going with, you know, the date we collected the seed, which how much seed we collected, what was the mother father, and then when we plant the seeds, we you know, we kind of keep track. So like here, I mean, I don't have
you can switch. Let's switch the camera really
you want to
quick.
switch to the phone?
Yeah.
Right, so I don't know if you can see in here, but these are some seedlings that were actually planted just like at the end of the first week of December. And we have like the labels that say like, you know, what the parent plant, what the parent plants were. And we're keeping track of things this way. So yeah, here are like two parents and the guys in the middle. These are about like one year, 3 months seedlings from those two plants. So
All right, you can pop back.
yeah.
Cool.
Next slide.
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha.
Right, so okay, so this is what we were kind of talking about before. We had, you know, those were the three Asterias that bloomed first. We had like a star shape, a royal cabuto, and then this purple Asterias. And so, you know, we noticed that when you cross the purple with the star shape, that the purple skin actually seems to have been transferred to more of those seedlings, at least for now. And it could also be that maybe you have to like really ramp up the light exposure to like bring out that coloration. I see Zach just, you know, he's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So we'll see. Another thing is the jury is still out on the effects of own root versus grafting. So, you know, for instance, there in the lower right corner, I'm showing there was one purple crossed with that royal cabuto mix that it really kept the purple color, and we grafted it. And so far it's stuck with the purple color, but you know, I don't know if we grafted some of the others that you're seeing, whether that color would show back up or not. We've also seen the reverse, which I can talk about later, where a plant started purple and then it turned green after we grafted it. So yeah, but overall with Asterias, not too much variation. So you can go to the next slide. So this kind of brings us to like the meat of this talk, which is, you know, we wanted to, for the fun of it, we were like, well, you know, these aren't really supposed to cross, but let's see if it works. And actually, I don't know what it is, if we just really lucked out on these Myrios, but they were pretty accepting of Asterias pollen. So I like this picture on the slide because this is like a mixed picture taken back in April of this year, where you can see like the Asterias, the hybrids and Myrios together in the same, like, you know, next to each other. So you can kind of tell that clearly there's some morphological differences. So I have this like little, you know, cartoon where Asterias are definitely flatter, more spherical. Myrios, at least, you know, the Myrios from like the pure crosses are definitely taller. And then actually the hybrids are somewhere in between in terms of like the length of the stem. So yeah, and as I mentioned before, we tried doing it the other way too, and it never worked for us. I mean, we can talk about this a little later. Like there are lots of people on Instagram that have like Asterias crosses, but it never worked for us personally. So yeah, you can move on to the next one. So a little bit about these hybrids. So far, all of them have 5 ribs. We often see kind of like round, you know, round shapes like the Strongylogonum type, like fat lobes. Many of them have variegation, but probably the most interesting thing that we've seen is that for one particular cross, which was like, you know, this Myrio with that royal cabuto, which, you know, sadly actually passed away after at the end of last summer. We found that they're seedlings with like almost like V-type markings. And, you know, definitely that's something that neither of the parents had. So we're kind of curious. And, you know, we definitely got about, I would say more than 100 seeds from that cross. Right. And we've seen a good mix of like the V-type and then like nudum seedlings actually. So right now we're in the process of like trying to, you know, analyze this a bit. So if you go to the next page, sorry. Right, so you can find online stories about the origins of various cultivars, like I mentioned on Zuka, you know, Super Cabuto, like this kind of stuff. But I think people are playing like where V-types come from, maybe to their chest like a little bit. And so we're here I'm showing like 3 seedlings that came from, you know, the same like fruit. So you see there are 2 speckled and 1 nudum. And now if you look at that tiny, like the runt, we grafted it, and now you can see like that's a pretty, like it looks like a pretty clear like V-type marking. So we're excited to see if maybe we can transfer that to another plant. In fact, what's cool about that, the picture on the left with the purple and the V-type is that they had the same father basically. So like the one on the left was purple Asterias mother with the royal cabuto, and then the one on the right was the Myrio, was the mother with the royal cabuto. So they're like half siblings basically, which, you know, 2 plants that look very different. So yeah, what we're interested in is trying to see what happens further with these hybrids. So if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, okay, right. So going a little, like just skipping back to kind of refresh about the clade differences, like, you know, Asterias and Myriostigma are like very far away from each other. So we were kind of curious to like start now digging into literature and yeah, seeing people's accounts on Instagram, whether there are these cactus growers that did similar work. And so we did find a little bit of stuff, but not a lot. So we'll show it like on the next slide or. Right. So then, right. One thing is like about nature. So, you know, depending on the source you find, some people say, you know, even for like, let's say Capricorn and Quahilense, which are found in the same area, people seem to say that like they didn't really find natural hybrids, but I don't really know what their methodology was. Like, for instance, this was like a German text that we were like, you know, automatic translating to try to find some information. But in this area of Mexico, you have these like mountain ranges, which provide a pretty strong geographic barrier, like long distance wise, for the type of pollinators that you would get. So you don't really expect to see, for instance, like bees or bats or whatever other animals crossing easily from the different areas that are shown on this map. At least that's what we found. So in terms of whether this occurs in nature, we'd love to hear from more people. Like if you know, if you do have outdoor space and you planted things in the ground, whether you might get hybrids occurring or not. But most of this stuff has been cultivars. So like in for people who are growing in nurseries and stuff. So if you go to the next one. Right, so actually here are some pictures of Myrio Asterias hybrids that we found on the internet. So the two in the middle are some growers from Italy, and then the ones on the edges, it's from Coron Cactus Nursery in Japan. And you know, you can tell that the ones from Italy for sure have like the V types. And I would say we see some similarities with what we have. And as we mentioned, we've seen people listing as Asmir hybrids on Instagram. There are people in Brazil. You know, I'm sure there's more. You know, there's only so many accounts that you can follow, but over time you can get some of that. So,
Sorry.
yeah, and then, you know, looking a little more into interspecies. So, for instance, like with Roman Pavlica, you know, he definitely has some pretty cool like Myriostigma ornatum hybrids, but you would expect that cross to occur more easily because they're pretty much on the same clade, like in terms of how far they are from their common ancestor. Actually, what's pretty funny is that on this history of Astrophytum in Japan, which is available as a PDF on the LESCSS you know, library, they talk about how they were trying to get this trait, the interstitial ribs, which Japanese call fukuryu, in Myriostigma, and apparently the plants were dying, and only when they backcrossed with ornatum were they able to actually stabilize that gene. So doing maybe these interspecies crosses like has some benefits, or at least there's some value to documenting what's done in terms of creating your own cultivars.
If you had to guess, how much of back crossing is happening that people aren't sharing?
You know, it's actually, I don't know, Georgiana might be able to offer a better guess than me.
I really don't know. I feel like we would find out more if we were to speak, I don't know, Japanese or Thai, right?
Right.
We see materials in these languages.
Right. Because you know, like when for instance, like we asked Roman if he had ever done, you know, Myrio Asterias Crosses, and what he told us is, no, I'm just more interested in like stabilizing the gene of like, you know, this one plant. And so if he, you know, if he was to say like, well, and I accomplished that by maybe crossing it with something else, like, and then you know, backbreeding, I think like that's kind of known, but you know, like I said, I don't know. I'm sure there could be for people with large scale operations, maybe like, you never know, there's like errant pollen or something that was tracked from a brush, or that, like, you know, you think, oh, I clean it every time, or I only use this, but like you just don't know, right? Especially with a lot of plants. So maybe when people find that like one magic seedling, it might not even be like you know, from
What
the
they think,
main thing,
yeah.
right? So okay. And then, you know, also looking in the literature though, like we found this German guy and he was saying that like dating back to like the 1900, there was this French abbot who did this. And then there's a Czech guy, Otakar Sadovsky, who like maybe the time of thinking at the time is if you cross plants, like you're trying to combine or get the most compatible types that came from like the common ancestors. So he was looking for like almost like the proto forms of the genus. So in this book we saw, you know, there are some examples of like I think there it's Asterias with Capricorn, and then they showed like Quahilense with Myriostigma. And overall, no problem. Like overall, it seems as if, right, like the crossing of interspecies does result in some interesting characteristics. Like, I mean, even, you know, people talk about how once you hybridize, you get more variegated plants, for instance. So I'm curious to see like, yeah, like what's the origin of Myriostigma Kiko, for instance, or Asterias Kiko, like, which look amazing, but so far I haven't seen anyone say, I got it by doing this with this, you know. So right, we found like a little bit of information, but not a ton. So yeah, next page. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about the growth rates in planters. So here's two pictures about, you know, 4 months, 2 weeks apart. I tried to, it's not a completely accurate scaling, but I tried to get the size of the akadama to be roughly the same in both. And then those circles are like the same size. So you can see like that Myriostigma nudum definitely grew faster than everything else. I mean, the Asterias are kind of like roughly still within the circle, but the hybrids are, you know, pretty small. We found for planters, and you can, you know, later you can see this with the phone, that keeping the humidity high, like having lids on your takeout containers, helps a lot. And one interesting factoid from that paper about like, you know, how the species migrated, it's like they were saying that there's a theory that way back, like when this was happening in the Pliocene, that the Gulf of Mexico was actually wetter and cooler than what was happening around the globe. Like, I think it was like, yeah, you know, a climate phenomenon related maybe to like La Nina or something like this. So maybe that's why they like humidity. You can see in Thailand, like, you know, humidity is high and those plants grow like crazy. But overall, like, yeah, the hybrid growth is still, I would say, slower than if you just do crosses of like Myrio to Myrio or Asterias to Asterias. And so that actually brings us to grafting. So if you go to the next slide.
Maybe one thing to add is that the hybrids seem to be much more robust. So I think the whole time we've managed to kill maybe one of them by overwatering. So they're pretty hard to kill. It is true that depending on what the parents are of the hybrids, we get a lot of very yellow seedlings that just don't make it. So, you know, for some hybrids, we get like 90% of them germinate and are viable seedlings. For other crosses, well, we would get more like 20% make it, and the others are just lacking chlorophyll.
Yeah. So you know, if we want to try doing F2s, we don't want to wait like over 5 years, I don't know, 8 years to get our first. So we saw from Roman that he does grafting on Ferrocactus Glaucescens. So here actually you're seeing just from May to November, you know, the growth rate on that stock. It's pretty good. This plant started off purple. The mother was actually, well, it was a nudum tree Myrio plant, and the father was the purple Asterias. And so it started off purple, and I was like, oh my god, if this is a purple, you know, like hybrid, that's going to be so sick. But when we grafted it, it just got green. So but it still looks pretty cool. It has that really nice like flat kind of shape, you know, where the ribs are not as defined in some Myriostigma. So that's one. And then if you go to the next one, so this is a cross we didn't really talk about because it was like definitely the lowest survival rate. So actually, Zach, maybe you want to bring the phone for this one. So in this one, this Myriostigma was the mother, this Super Cabuto was the father, and so we got only like 5 survived out of like 118, but this is one of the survivors, and it looks amazing. Like we really think it's like, you know, it has like this really defined like ribline specs. It even on the side, like it has like bands of like flex, but it's definitely not all over the body. So to us, this is like, you know, a great example of a seedling that came out looking really like a mix of like the 2 parents. So you know, that's cool. The fact that there was such low germination, I don't know what our hopes are for if this plant is going to flower and be successful, but you know, who knows?
Backcross it.
Backcross it, yeah, exactly. Okay, so you can go one more. And oh, okay, so the other thing, we did grafting on other things as well. Actually, we tried on a few different plants. This is actually mislabeled. I think this is just a Asterias. It's not Browningia Hertlingiana. But what we found is that, you know, if you're trying to line up those vascular rings, if depending on the age of the stock plant, sometimes the ring is just too big. And so we were actually, you know, you see this cartoon in the bottom right of the slide where we are trying to fit them kind of on the perimeter of the ring. So here is like one of our hybrids on the left, and then an Asterias Kiko on the right, and you can see on this stock, this Asterias, like it grew pretty fast. Actually, that Kiko is even trying to form like flower buds, you know, after like a couple of months. They didn't like actually make it, but you can tell like there's a lot of energy going in. And then I thought this was funny, like in the upper right, like we did find a picture where a guy grafted a variegated Asterias on a Myriostigma, and we were thinking like, oh, maybe we'll try this in the future, because we do have a lot of nudum Myriostigmas that are nice plants, but not the most exciting. So if some of them can, you know, help us speed along the process, we can maybe devote a couple. So yeah, we can go to the next one. So 2021, we got some new plants from various sources. So there's some Kiko plants, someone on Instagram, I think, seriously obsessed. Maybe?
Yes.
And then we also got some plants from Roman. So, you know, this year, in 2020, like record keeping, we got over 1,000 seeds from the plants that we pollinated, and this year 2021 we're at like 1,600. So it's been a better year, and one of the sorry.
Oh no, sorry.
You can go to the next one, maybe. So actually, yeah, we were trying to plot just like the number of seeds we collected per month. So the solid lines are just totals, and then the data points underneath are like the broken down by either Myrio, hybrid, or Asterias. And so I mentioned last year the plants were outside, but then we had to, you know, move them in once it got colder. And in 2021 they were all inside. So in you know, September, October, where things were dropping off last year, we definitely had pretty good numbers, and actually you can tell on the October that they were all hybrid, like it was all Myrio Asterias crosses. So we have some new things in the pipeline, and you know, we're gonna hopefully graft some. We're gonna, you know, keep documenting what we've observed. Like there's some there's some plants that have like, you know, the really big areoles, like Oibo. We're excited for that, and like our first like Kiko hybrids too. So yeah, it's we're hoping to, you know, keep it up.
Super quick question.
Sure.
Sorry. Why graft on Ferrocactus?
So well, okay, like I guess like, not that I've read too much about it, I'll just say off the top of my head, like, okay, like the Ferrocactus, like the Glaucescens, the plant definitely has the potential to grow for like a long time and get really big. So maybe when you're choosing a stock, like you are looking for that. The other thing is just from an aesthetic perspective, it's easier to like sink it like into the pot and not have like, you know, the columnar. So Roman actually, talks about this, that it gives you more of an appearance of like an own-rooted plant as opposed to on columnar. And later we can show you, we can show you one of Roman's plants where it looks like own root, but it is a graft.
Right.
In fact, maybe
Okay.
Georgiana can hold it up to the phone.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Yeah. So this plant that Georgiana is showing is actually a grafted plant. It's just that the graft is submerged like in the soil. And so, yeah, I don't know if like, not to try to deceive people, like we would always tell them if it is grafted or not, but maybe you want to manage your collection and you don't want a lot of columnar plants, which are also easier to like tip over, so yeah, that's just Ferrocactus, but we've tried on a lot of things like fellow,
Yeah, that works.
even like a Mafukana or like something like this. So yeah, we're and actually, in the Lower East Side Club, we know like there's a member, Alexander, who's like really into grafting. So hopefully we can touch base with him and get some, tips and lessons to help like combine our knowledge basically. So yeah.
Cool.
And I think that is the end. So like, I really want to thank everyone who attended this talk. Like we really appreciate you taking time out of the Saturday. And definitely thanks to the LESCSS for giving us this opportunity to present and share. And yeah, we have some pictures of our cat, who is like, the #1 cause of seedling death in this apartment. But when he's on his good behavior, he's not bad. So yeah, that's it for me. Georgiana, do you have?
No, wait, I guess I can take questions.
Right, so we can go into the questions, and if we want to switch to the
Why
phone
not?
view,
I can unmute everyone so people
can ask their
Yeah.
questions. Okay.
it should come through, or you have to turn that volume up on there, I think.
All right, Eduardo, what do you mean by micrografting?
Hi. It's a technique that you make when you have recently sprout cacti. So you grab a 2-week seedling and then you graft it at a very young age. Have you ever tried?
We've tried maybe like once, and I don't even think that young. Like I think we didn't have a lot of confidence in our technique, so we started with like bigger seedlings, and now we're thinking, okay, maybe we'll get more adventurous, but we haven't tried it personally. I've seen that Roman does it for like, yeah, like you said, a couple weeks old, so it is for sure it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I did some Myriostigmas grafting before this, and I don't think I ever went to 2 weeks, but I did do seedlings that were about a month. And on Myriostigmas, it actually worked pretty reliably, except the Astrophytums were the ones that were not always growing that fast compared to everything else I grafted. So I think I did Echinocactus, Discocactus, Copiapoa. The reason why I stopped doing that, I stopped grafting on Myriostigmas, is that about 1 year and a half later, they just stopped growing. And at that point, you need to degraft. I never really got good at degrafting. So yeah, it just, at least for me, it didn't look like I could keep them on Myriostigmas for a long time. So I stopped doing that.
You get a text question. Will you read?
Yeah, so Parker, our brethren, asked, can you just like go over the process of pollinating? And then I guess it's like a general husbandry question, right? So he
Sure.
wants to know about pollinating, he wants to know about the soil, and then your light and watering, all in reference to germination.
Sure. So with the pollination, like we've seen from different sources, like there's a school of thought, like some people say, if you put less pollen on the stigma, like you'll have fewer seeds, but the seeds are bigger. And then the people are like, okay, but if you do the opposite, like you really try to get as much as possible, you'll get many seeds, but there might be like a bit smaller. So I do the latter. I just want to like really, make sure in my mind that I've done everything possible to try to achieve pollination.
And how are you pollinating?
So what I do is I'll cut the filaments with the pollen, like from the stamen. And then, so like I'll have like a little scissors, I cut it, and then I will take a paintbrush or like a tweezer and I'll direct that onto the stigma of the mother plant, and then I'll use the paintbrush to like really just go all around the stigma protrusions to try to get the pollen on there. So that's how I do it. I've noticed that you can just do the paintbrush method, like just put the paintbrush in, swirl it. And if you look and you see that there's like a good amount of pollen on it, then like I would say you can feel confident about doing that. But sometimes with some plants, I've noticed like not so much pollen accumulating on the paintbrush that way. And that's when I just cut the filaments to make sure that I get as good contact as possible.
You could also do two feathers, right? Like we've done that reliably now.
Oh, right. And another, right. Okay, so this is like an aside, but like if you, for us, like what we found is that we would have like, right, one flower open and we would actually put in pollen from two different plants. And we would see that in the seeds that came out, like you can, like, let's say you did a Myrio cross and then like a hybrid cross, like based on the morphology of the seedlings, you can differentiate, but that actually does seem to work. It's not like once the plant grabs pollen from one, it's like it shuts down. But to like full disclosure, like none of us have any biology background, so like I'm just going off of like what we did basically.
And then so for germinating seeds, like what's your soil, what's your water, what's your light?
Okay, so what, like cleaning the seeds is important. So like when they come out of the fruit, they're gonna have like, Myrios have these like kind of like fleshy white things that attach them. You want to clean off all the organics. Asterias, like you can put it in a sieve and like use water and that gets most of it. But I found for Myrios, it's harder to do it. Like you really have to kind of painstakingly pull it out. We use, honestly, we microwave Hoffman's cactus soil. You can just get it off the shelf. Recently, we started putting in a bit of akadama into the soil as well, but like maybe just like 10% akadama to this mix. We put the seeds in and then we water them with, oh, and I should say, sorry, when you microwave the soil, we definitely pour water, so it's moist. And then we add more water. We mix Kapton, which is like an antifungal agent, into water. Georgiana knows the ratio.
Yeah, we don't really measure, it gets white and cloudy, and it's cloudy enough.
So then we give like, a couple generous like sprays of this mixture, and then a sealed container. So like, Zach had showed earlier, this takeout container. And then we leave it. We found that if you clean the seeds right, I mean, you can sometimes see germination in like 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it takes longer. And then we try to, from then on, we try not to take the lid off, at least for like a couple of months. If you do need to water it, you can do it through the bottom. So like we cut a hole in the takeout container at the bottom, you have the mesh, and then you can like submerge that in like a dish of water. So the soil, takes it up through the bottom. And what we did find also is that, you don't want to roast them with light, but you can tell like seedlings do get etheriolated if they're getting mostly heat and not enough light. So some light exposure is good to keep them looking plump and not like stringy.
Right. And we always keep an eye on them, right? So we check them out every couple of days. If we see fungus,
Right.
we open them, clean, let it dry. And the same for light, right? Like we can tell just from the color of the seedlings, they're getting too much light, is it not getting enough? So we just adjust a lot.
And so just for Alex, the seedlings and the mature plants are getting the same potting mixture. He had asked.
Yeah, yes, so like at least for astrophytums, recently for things like ferrocactus, like we started going like a bit more mineral. I guess like, you know, many people have seen maybe this like article from Xerophilia, and they talk about, right, like in nature, like the roots are looking for these like scaffolds, these rocks, these structures to grab onto. So we in our recent seedlings, like ones we planted this year, we like I said, we did like maybe 10% of like akadama mixed in with the soil. And I guess we'll see if we notice any, you know, marked improvement in like the growth rate, or whether it's like about the same. I mean, the problem is the one thing we're not keeping that good track of is like trying to be like, oh, when is the optimal time to plant? So for instance, like if you collect seeds in like June, July, if they're not hybrids, you know, after like a week or two, like we'll just plant them. But we actually found with those hybrids, the Myrio Asterias, that if you plant very quickly after, the germination rate is bad, like the seedlings don't look good. But if you wait like a month and, you know, change, then it's really good. So sometimes so like recently, like, yeah, we planted, you know, these and like just like maybe like a week or two ago, we plant into October. But you know, indoors it's okay. You can give them heat through like heat pads, or, you know, just put like a grow light on them for like a little period. It heats up the container basically.
We're getting a request for you to show off your Uvomanias.
Oh, okay. That Georgiana should do this.
Sure, I can do this. Are you?
There you go. Hold up. There you go.
Right, so this is probably the largest Uvomania we have. We've had it for about 3 years. It was maybe half the size when we got it. They seem to like water. We water not a lot, but relatively generously. We've had some Uvomanias that have died just you know, very quickly without being able to even tell why. But some have made it and they're doing well. I've been growing some Uvomanias from seed as well. So I think the largest seedling, Uvomania seedling is this one. I would say it's not that difficult. They're relatively easy, but it's not easy to find seeds. So that's something that you know, I would order, for example, from Germany, some Uvomania seeds. This is another adult that's not doing so great. So this larger one is not grown seed.
You should show them these.
Oh, right. And these are some, I recently managed to get more Uvomania seeds. So let me see. Okay, these are grown from seed, but this year they're probably 4 months old, I would say. I already took these out of their humidity chambers, but they seem to be doing well. They like light. And the others that are the same age, I'm keeping them in takeout containers to see which ones grow faster. If they look different, they're probably going to end up looking differently. So yeah, I think, do we have other? Oh, there's a couple more Uvomanias here. They've been doing well, but they're not. Yeah. Oh, right. So these are Uvomanias that are grown from seed and are the same age as the other ones, so a few months old. There's a mixture here, so you can probably tell most of what's in here is Asterias, and then there's some Uvomania. So yeah, I really like growing them from seed, so I'm definitely going to try to do more of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, if there are no more questions, we might wrap it up. Are there any more questions?
What, two more?
Yeah, okay. So
One
Alex
more.
says he loves your setup. Very cool. We have a question about your indoor lighting.
Sure. So, well, Georgiana, you want to?
Sure. So now we've switched completely to these light bulbs. We like them a lot. One thing that we've noticed is that they're actually changing the spectrum on the light bulbs. So we're trying to get them stronger and stronger. And these are full spectrum, but they actually vary in the spectrum. So unfortunately, we get, I think, the best results with one particular type that they've discontinued. But overall, we get good results with them. In the past, I've tried the lights that were not full spectrum, basically pink and blue, like red and blue. At least the ones that I had, I got very bad results. The seedlings were getting burned, but they were not growing. So it wasn't ideal. And then we just like full spectrum more because it just looks better. This is our living room. We like them to, to be pleasing. I would say at this point, the only difficulty is to find lamps that cover the light bulb because they don't want to be staring at the light, right? So yeah, and the room, I think we have pretty much similar setups.
And then you have
yeah.
unobstructed south-facing windows.
Right. So the two lamps here that you're seeing are basically just kind of more for, sometimes at night we might want to give like certain plants a bit of light, but otherwise there's no lights for the plants that are here. On the ones that you saw maybe at the very start of the talk in the bookshelves, there's like Sansi LEDs that are just kind of hung and right. We found that actually the distance to the seedling does matter a lot. So if you're too low, you'll burn them, and then too high, like you're not getting quite enough. So we experimented a little bit with like the height of this, but basically those plants, the lights are only on at night. They're not on during the day. And then we turn them off before going to bed. So now in winter it gets dark around like 4:35. So like 5 they go on, and then if we're going to sleep like between 11 and midnight. So the lights are on for probably like 6 hours, and then during the day we're not really keeping them on.
And then okay, so like you just talked about your light requirements. Do you do anything differently in the winter for like the broader collection? Like, are you tapering your light schedules? Are you like, what's the watering, like that sort of stuff?
So like in summer, we were just kind of sticking to time, okay, water it every week. Now in winter, we're doing it more like visually. You can tell if the akadama is dry, and also like the weight of the pot, like you can tell when something's really dried out. So like in winter, we try to wait until it's really dried out before giving it any water. And so that can basically just change individually from planter to planter, or from, pot to pot. In general, I feel like we water less in winter, but for, it's funny, like in the Japanese, like the Japanese book, History of Astrophytum, like the guy actually says that winter is like a growing season for them, and he says that they're actually more dormant in Japan in summer. And we have noticed that some of these plants definitely started hitting their stride like at the end of fall into like winter, like they're going. So like we're trying not to like withhold water from them just because it's winter. Like they're taking it. We're not going too crazy, but we're giving them water. So
but that's the case for the seedlings. So the adult plants,
Right.
we definitely almost stop watering in winter. Maybe we water once every 2 months, and that's it, just to be safe.
Right.
And the adult plants do not grow in winter. Like we don't try to make them grow. So
yeah, when they start wrapping up the blooms, then pretty much it's like they're going to be dormant after that.
Right.
So although this Myriostigma did bloom in like December
Right.
of 2020. So, like sometimes you just don't know what's going on.
Do you do anything for water treatment or do you just water with tap?
Just NYC tap water. We did like do the pH test and we thought it looked in the range. So we
Yeah,
thought
it came
like,
out in the range, so.
maybe why not? I mean, at some point we were like flirting with the idea of doing a control, like, one planter that had a bit more acidity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I as of now, we just do the water, try not to have it like too cold basically.
Yeah.
And like just the water from the tap.
Fertilizer.
When we do use it, it's like that tomato kind of like, crystalline, the red stuff.
777
Is that it?
or 747.
I think 747. I'll check.
So like, because our soil mixture is more organic than I think most people use, like we actually don't fertilize that much. So this year, for instance, like I think we've fertilized like either like 4 times maybe.
Maybe, yeah, but we've done, we fertilized now, but it had been, I think, over half a year since we had last time.
Yeah, so not a lot. Like, I mean, I remember seeing a YouTube interview with this guy in Thailand, and he was saying like in his opinion, he's like the less like you have to give them, it's like the more adaptable they are in like hard times. So for instance, like I'll give an anecdote. It's like we were on a trip in the summer, and so they weren't watered, and when we came back, like things were looking like shriveled as hell. I was really upset. I was like, oh god, like but yeah, just some careful watering, and within like a month they were back to looking good. So I guess maybe there's something to that, as opposed to like juicing them younger and then they're not equipped to deal with some hardships later on. I don't know.
Right, so again, these are the seedlings, so they were here, they were not covered, and we were gone, I think, for maybe close to a month. And we didn't realize they did get burned, they were dehydrated, they looked quite bad when they got back. I think they really just got a lot of sun during that time. But yeah, like 2 weeks later, they were looking great again. So yeah, all good.
All right, no more questions? All right, well, thank you everybody for joining. We're gonna try and have a cadence of these again this year and all that sort of stuff. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Oh wait, shout out your Instagram handle.
Oh, G.3786.
Follow that for some crazy hybridization and propagation advice. Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.